I'm Dr. Robbyn Traylor. Welcome back to Clean Conscious Network, where I am spending a good amount of my time speaking to my family about our history. Today is a very special and historic day in the life of Clean Conscious and storytelling because I have literally one of my most favorite people on the planet, the woman responsible for all of this. My beloved and dear mother, Ruth Kennedy Franklin. Yay! Yay! Welcome to Clean Conscious Network, Mommy. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have you here. Okay. So there's so many things to talk about, but I think first I want to start with your professional resume, okay? So that people understand the power that is in the room, the intellect that is in the room. So Mother, will you please tell us when you retired, what was your title?
My title was Senior Vice President for Patient Care Services at the Harris County Hospital District.
Okay. So Senior Vice President, Patient Care Services, Harris County Hospital District.
Yes.
Okay. Will you please explain to me what that means? Who is a Harris County Hospital District?
The Harris County Hospital District is a hospital system that was primarily set up to service indigent patients within Harris County. And the Harris County Hospital District is comprised of 3 hospitals. And at the time of my retirement, we had about 11 community health centers that were positioned in neighborhoods so patients could easily access health care.
Okay. And so what were some of the names of the larger hospitals that you helped to run and supervise?
The Ben Taub General Hospital was the primary hospital. It was a level 1 trauma center for the city of Houston.
That's right.
And of course, Jefferson Davis Hospital, which grew out of the old, the LBJ Hospital grew out of the Jefferson Davis Hospital, which from the onset, it was primarily OB and respiratory care because all of our TB patients and those sorts were treated at old Jefferson Davis.
Okay. Mother, at the peak of your career, how many people and departments would you say that you supervised? Tell them.
Okay. At the peak of my career, I had responsibility as nurse executive for all of nursing for the entire hospital district. I don't recall exactly how many employees there were at the time, but of course, being nurses, we were the largest department within the hospital district system. But I also supervised or was administratively responsible for the physical therapy department, the occupational therapy department, the chaplaincy department, the patient escort services department, and let's see.
You had education for
education, most definitely. I grew out of education because when I first came to the hospital district, I was a staff nurse on the Med-Surg unit on 4 South.
Okay.
And one day I happened to get a call at home because I was working the 7 p to 7 a shift.
Okay.
And I got a call from my mentor, Dr. Lois Jean Moore, and asked me if I would consider serving as an in-service instructor. And of course, an in-service instructor is responsible for the education and the updates of all of the staff on the Joint Commission standards and the like, and the OSHA standards. And we did all of the orientation and the like. So she asked if I would consider that. Well, It didn't take me long to think about it, but I said, oh gosh, I'd love to try it.
Right.
So I did, and that subsequently led to my actually being promoted over time to be the senior vice president for the district education department. And the district education department was responsible for all of education at the Harris County Hospital District, not just nursing. We coordinated the education for all of the staff at the hospital district.
Okay. I'm literally beaming with pride. Literally beaming, shooting, exuding pride. I'm so proud of you. It's such a big deal, and I've always been proud of you. I don't think that I understood the full scope of your power and executiveness when I was young, because you were doing all of this and you were my mom, like I was just witnessing you go to work at Bentop. Sometimes you would even take me to work.
Yes.
At Bentop. I might have spent a couple of hurricanes in the Bentop, babysitting, child care area. But mother, that's a lot of achievement. It is also a lot of power. A lot of power, a lot of respect was given to you.
It was.
Right.
It was.
Yeah.
And I must say that my mentor, Mrs. Lois Jean Moore, or Dr. Lois Jean Moore, as she has acclaimed to this point, she saw more in me than I ever saw in myself.
Yeah.
And she recognized opportunity. And I can just recall when she asked me, I was senior vice president for the education department at the time, and she told me that she wanted me to consider becoming the nurse executive for the hospital district, a former role which she held, because she was over all of nursing during her career tenure there. And I thought about it, and I was shaking in my boots, because I knew who some of the vice presidents were of nursing, and they were some very powerfully driven people.
Right.
And I just didn't know how that would go over. But I must say, with much prayer and with her support, and just with being surrounded by highly educated and highly supportive individuals, it was a tremendous experience.
Okay. So, mother, you are essentially like a chief nursing officer at Harris County Hospital District.
Right.
Did you serve on any boards or anything like that?
I, let's just say, in the Texas Medical Center, I became the president of the Texas Nurses Executive Committee.
Wow.
For a period.
Okay.
I served as the president over all of the nurse executives from all of the hospitals within the Texas Medical Center. So I had that awesome responsibility.
Okay. And I believe that you established a connection between the hospital district and San Jacinto colleges.
Okay. During one of my roles at the hospital district, Mrs. Moore wanted to see a career development path developed for our employees. Largely, it was focused on our LVNs, who had been at Bentop and LBJ for many, many years, but they had a desire to be registered nurses, but they just didn't see the means.
Right.
So Mrs. Moore came up with the idea of having a career mobility program for our employees.
Okay.
And again, the target population were the LVNs at the time. So I was charged with developing and establishing that program. And along with that, I assumed a joint appointed position with San Jacinto College and the Harris County Hospital District. And I served as the clinical instructor for the nurses that were coming through this program. And our classrooms were at the old administration building on the campus of Jefferson Davis.
Okay.
And I think you visited there a number of times.
Yes.
We had our classrooms. In fact, we even were able to offer some of the academic classes to these LVNs who may have needed government or history or something in order to get their registered nurse credentials.
Okay. So that's incredible. And I'm going to take a step back now. Please let us know where you were educated, what levels of education you benefited from.
Okay. Well, of course, I graduated from Bragg Morris High School in Lindale, Texas.
First things first.
Yes.
Bragg Morris, Lindale,
Bragg
Texas.
Morris, yes.
Okay.
And then I was inspired to pursue nursing because my mother had a picture of one of my brother's girlfriends at Prairie View, and she was a nurse from Prairie View, dressed in all of her regalia. She had the black stripe on the white cap. She had the royal blue, navy blue cape with the red lining, and so periodically I would go into the guest bedroom at our house and I'd look at that picture, and her name was Pat. And I'd look at that picture and I said, well, maybe I should think about being a nurse.
Because Pat was so gorgeous in all of her regalia.
Yes. And see, originally I thought maybe I would pursue a career in voice or singing,
right?
Because I love to sing.
You are beautiful. Wait, okay, I can't go stopping and interrupting you this soon, but you have the most beautiful soprano voice I've ever heard in my life. Now, people who don't know you and who did not benefit from hearing your voice, I don't know. I don't know how to make them know your voice, but I would say think Audra McDonald, okay? Think opera diva, think gospel music, think just incredible, beautiful soprano, blows you away. Okay, so you had that talent coming from Bragg Morris, where you graduated salutatorian from rural East Texas, colored high school.
Yes.
Okay, but then you decided nurses are beautiful.
Yes.
Pat looks amazing in her nursing regalia in the picture that's in your home.
Yes.
And so you thought, maybe I could be a nurse.
Be a nurse.
I would love to look like that.
And in fact, I said, well, I can be a nurse, but I can also sing on the side. So my passion or my talents for singing could just be an enhancement of that role. So it's just been a beautiful journey for me.
Okay, that's incredible. And so you matriculate from Bragg Morris to Prairie View with the intention of becoming a nurse.
Yes.
And I think that you may have received some additional education, but I don't want to speak for you. What else is mixed in there?
While I was at the hospital district, there were opportunities, of course, for advancement. And in certain roles, they required a master's degree for certain levels of positions at the hospital district.
Right.
So I, on my own, before I even dared pursue any of those positions, I just decided that I'd better go ahead and get my master's degree now while I'm still single.
Right.
So I did get my master's degree in nursing with an emphasis on education from Texas Women's University in 1978.
Okay.
The same year I was married.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, so now I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. I really wanted people to understand who you are professionally. And you're so much more, in your private life and to the community. You've held many titles, many positions of power in the community and certainly at home, But Mom, you are a young woman who is from rural East Texas. You are raised essentially in the Jim Crow South.
Oh, yes.
And your father is a black farmer, your mother's a homemaker, and you come from very, very humble beginnings.
Very meager.
Very meager. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Mother, tell me the family that you're born into. You don't have to tell us your date of birth if you're uncomfortable with that, but please tell me about the time that you're born and the family that you're born into and what the conditions are of the family and home and community that you're born into.
Well, I was born in the Redland community. I was delivered at home by a midwife, and I've forgotten her name because she delivered a number of my mother's children. I'm number 8 of 11 children of Lofton Kennedy and Mary Frances Kennedy. So most of us were delivered at home. In fact, I believe 9 of the 11, or it could be 10 of the 11, were delivered at home because, to my recollection, Doris, my younger sister Doris, was the only one born in a hospital.
Okay.
So
you're born number 8 in the Redland community.
yeah.
What's a big city or big town near Redland?
We are very close to Tyler. And in fact, when we introduce ourselves, we say we're from East Texas, but we're close to Tyler, which is the closest town to where we lived out in the country.
Okay.
So Tyler, Texas.
Okay, great. So your parents are Lofton Kennedy and Mary Frances Shaver.
Yes.
Shavers?
Shavers.
With an S.
Yes,
Shavers Kennedy.
Kennedy, yes.
And you are the 8th of what would be 11 children.
Exactly.
You're born at home with the assistance of a midwife.
Yes.
And I'm sure when I speak to your siblings, somebody is going to know the name of this midwife.
I have it on my birth certificate, and I forgot. I really had planned to review it for the purpose of being able to acknowledge her today.
We'll get it. We'll get it.
Yes.
That's fine. But so that already to me is an amazing story, because in the time that I grew up, largely the 80s in Houston, Texas, to my college educated parents, we were living in like Missouri City and Sugar Land. I didn't have a whole lot of friends with like 10 other siblings. That was unheard of.
Yes.
In the era that I grew up in.
Yes.
But I think for the era that you grew up in, maybe it wasn't too uncommon to have dozens,
Exactly.
at least a dozen children,
Exactly.
at home. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, let me just say to highlight a little bit about the size of families and the like. My grandfather's sister, they had the same mother but different fathers. Aunt Frances, she had 22 children.
Lord,
22
Jesus.
children. And
22?
Of the 22, there were probably at least 3 sets of twins.
Wow.
That she birthed.
My goodness.
But Aunt Frances was my grandfather's sister. Zach Shavers was my grandfather. Aunt Frances, of course, was his sister.
She is a phenomenal
Yes.
woman, Aunt Frances. They don't build them like Aunt Frances anymore.
That's Cousin Kay's grandmother.
What? Okay.
That's Cousin Kay.
Oh, we love Evelyn Kay Holloway.
Yes.
She's incredible. Okay. So, Mother, you're number 8. Talk to me about your siblings. How many boys and girls?
Okay. I have 8 brothers. 8 brothers. And 2 sisters.
Okay, so
Yes.
you are one of 3 sisters.
Yes.
And at the time that you're born, you have one older sister.
Yes, and she's 11 years older than me, or maybe 12 years older than me.
Yeah.
And I was 11 years older than Doris.
Wow. Now I didn't realize that you're right in the middle of Aunt
Yes.
Jean and Aunt Doris.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and then you have many brothers, many
Yeah.
brothers. Talk to me about your family's Prairie View legacy, just so we can kind of understand. You all go from East Texas to, Prairie View to just incredible
Yes.
professional careers.
Yes.
But uh, how many of you all went to college out of all those children that are born to Lofton and Mary Frances?
10 of us went and graduated from college. 9 of us graduated from Prairie View A&M. My brother Charles, he graduated from Jarvis Christian College because at the time of his graduation, he received somewhat of a full scholarship to attend Jarvis Christian College.
So we
in
will
Hawkins,
forgive.
Texas.
We will forgive
him.
Uncle Charles for going the way of Jarvis. But
Yeah.
Uncle Charles goes on to have a stellar career, and I guess
Yes.
Dallas ISD, their
Yes.
school districts. He's a principal. He is
Yes.
beloved.
Yes.
But the rest of y'all went to Prairie View.
Exactly.
Okay.
And of course, I say that 10 of us were educated. Our youngest brother, John, was killed when he was a senior in high school in a terrible auto accident right on Highway 64, the highway that runs right in front of our home.
Right.
So he was killed there along with 2 other young boys who were in the car with him.
I spoke with your brother, my dear Uncle Lofton, Dr. Lofton Kennedy. And when speaking about your younger brother, John, who
Yes.
my Uncle John, who I never met, Uncle Lofton says that he was the most talented among you,
Yes.
that he was brilliant, that he was an artist,
Yes.
that he was an athlete,
yes.
that he was a very talented athlete, and
Yes.
that I think Uncle Lofton said that he thought he might become a physician also.
Exactly. That was his desire to become a physician. And I'll just never forget that it was on a Sunday evening that I received a call. My brother, I think my brother Earl, called me to let me know that John had been fatally injured in a car accident on Highway 64. And as a matter of fact, my dad, who pastored a church in Longview, Texas, passed right by the accident, not knowing that was because the accident site was still there.
Yeah.
The car was still there, and the police and lots of people were there. He didn't even recognize his own vehicle.
Yeah.
Because it was a very, very tragic scene.
That's terrible.
And in fact, one of the white neighbors that lived across the street, came over when he saw that Daddy had come home and asked him, did he know about, or did he see that accident?
Yeah.
And he told him that was his car.
Oh God.
Yes.
My God.
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
Yeah.
Your family endured pain.
Oh yes.
Like real pain, real hardship. But let me go back to you being born into this family. Would you describe so I said humble beginnings, you said meager,
Yeah.
Is, would another word be poor?
Very much so. Very,
Okay.
very, very poor.
Okay.
We really, my dad did farming, but he was not a farmer to produce produce to sell. It was produce for our substance, for our lives.
Right.
And so we raised pretty much everything that we ate. The only thing that I recall us buying largely was flour and meal and sugar. Those were 3 commodities that we bought on a regular basis because we raised all the vegetables imaginable, and I worked the fields just alongside the boys. In fact, my sister Jean even plowed the fields with my brothers.
Oh Lord.
She was called upon to plow the fields with my alongside them.
A lot of the reason that I wanted to capture this history from you and from Dad is because I really don't believe our children today understand the arc, or just like the trajectory uh, from which our family has come, right?
Yes.
And so, because a lot happened for you in your lifetime, you literally went from field work.
Oh, yes.
In rural East Texas to being the chief nursing officer at Harris County Hospital District.
Yes.
And to me, that is miraculous. I don't know
I
how
was
else to
blessed.
describe it. I would just call that a pure miracle. But you are someone who can say that you very rarely even visited a grocery store before you went to college.
Well, I may have gone to the grocery store, but as I said, because of the lack of funds,
Right.
there were very few groceries in the cart because most of the groceries were in the field or on the farm because we raised the hogs that we killed. Daddy would kill a hog, at least two hogs once a year. And again, that was to provide the meat for our meals. And I don't ever recall us killing a cow, but we had a number of cows because I never drank pasteurized milk until I went to college.
My goodness.
I drank unpasteurized milk at home.
Wow.
And we loved it.
Wow. Okay. Well, so you're born, and I'm imagining that largely at home. Well, if Aunt Jean is only about 12 years older than you, then just about everyone is still at home when you're born. I don't think I ever put that together.
Mhm.
That for me, that is a revelation because I thought that perhaps by the time you were born, like Uncle Nat, Aunt Jean are gone.
They were. In fact, Nat reminds me that when I was born, he was already in college, and he recalls me being afraid of him.
Oh.
He said I was afraid of him because I didn't know him and he wasn't in the household.
Yeah.
But the rest of the boys, and Aunt Jean, I think Aunt Jean had gone off to college as well at Prairie View at the time.
Okay.
So when I was born.
When you were born, so she may be a little bit older than 12 years, unless people were going to Prairie View when they were really young. How old were people when they were going to college back in the day?
16, 17.
Really?
16,
Okay.
17.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was born in 1947, and I'm proud to say I'll be 77 this year.
Yeah. You don't look a day over 40, Mommy. But so I think these days most kids go to college when they're about 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But you and your siblings are headed for college, or 16, 17 was not unusual at the time.
I didn't do the math, but I know that Nat told me that he was in college. And because Jean is just about 2 years younger than he is, she may have been gone.
Okay.
She may have been gone to college at the time too.
Okay. So you grow up, then largely the siblings that are at home when you're a baby are all brothers.
Boys.
My gosh.
All boys. And look, one of the things that I can remember is when I would be fortunate enough to get a doll for Christmas, they would want to be combing the doll's hair, and I have to fight them.
I'm sure your father loved that.
I have to fight them to have my dolls, because they wanted to play with the doll and comb hair.
You're a girl growing up with a bunch of older brothers.
Yes.
Nobody picked on you in the community, I'm imagining.
Oh, no. And my brothers, they slept 3 to a bed, at the time, 3 to a bed, but because I was a girl. And when we moved over to the highway, to our current homestead, Daddy built the house such that I could have my own room. And it was called the girls' room.
The girls, but you are
the boys' room.
Yeah, right.
You
are the girl. you're literally a princess. I mean, you're there. They have to share a room. They're boys. I'm sure they share maybe clothes. Maybe they share lots of things. I don't know. But you're the one girl in the house when you're growing
Well,
up.
look, you say princess. Maybe only princess because I had my own room, but I worked the fields. Daddy, the work was lined out for us pretty much equally. There was no distinction in the work that I did large and what my brothers did. Now, I didn't plow. I didn't have to plow, but Jean did say that she did have to plow. But I do recall one day that Daddy came to me and he said, baby, he said, I hate to ask you to do this. He says, but today I'm going to have to ask you to plow because the man that was supposed to come to plow the fields to help Daddy with the farm was ill or something or just didn't show up. So he said, I'm going to have to ask you to plow. Well, I went back to my room. I said, I'm running away from home because I knew that I had 8 brothers and there is no way I am going to plow the fields. So I did. I went to my room and I said, I'm going to run away from home today. Then of
This
course
is
I
the
said,
day. Now, you've already, by this time, how old do you think you are when you're deciding, I've got to leave home? Because my father is going to make me plow. And I have older, stronger brothers.
I'm probably a teenager. I'm a teenager.
Yeah.
And yes. And he says because the person didn't show up, he was going to have to ask me to plow.
Yeah.
So anyway,
No.
As God would have it, he sent a ram in the bush because another gentleman came and helped Daddy with the plowing.
So you didn't have to run away that day.
Okay.
Okay.
Didn't have to run away.
Well, so let's start with the work because the work is a lot. It's like it's so important to the way that you are raised.
Yes.
Okay, and I can imagine that a family that depends on their farm and their vegetables,
Mhm.
the ranching and full scale ranching,
Yes.
to live.
Oh yeah.
That work is essential,
Yes.
for life. And so, talk to me about your early days. Like, when do you first remember going out to the fields to pick peas or do whatever you did? Tell me what you did.
As far back as I can remember, I always worked in the fields or the garden. My mother, Mary Frances, always had big vegetable gardens over at the original home site, and she would have rows and rows of like cabbage and greens and
Wow.
string beans and English peas, green peas. So I learned to work very early, and work was important to my dad because he grew up having to work because his parents died very young. And so he became like the head of his household, his brothers, and the like at the time. And so work was very important to him, and he instilled a very healthy respect for work and the ethics of work
Right.
when we were very young. And we all had roles and responsibilities because Zach and I, when we were over at the other place, one of the things that we had to do every evening, we picked up chips of wood that was used to put into the heater to keep the heat going
Yeah.
because we had no electricity at the time. We had lanterns, with kerosene lamps, should I say, and wood stoves and the like.
So, Mother, describe to me your first home that you were born into. What's it like?
It was just a wood frame house, and I really can't say that I know actually how many rooms were in there. I would imagine that my parents had a room, and probably the boys were all in a room together. And, as a baby, me being a baby, I probably was maybe in the room with my parents. That's how I imagine it. And I know that there was a kitchen with a wood stove and all of that, and of course, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, we did not have electricity at all, and we did not have any gas or anything at the time at the other place, as
What
we
about
called
like
it.
running water?
Oh no, we had a well,
So
and
you ran to get the water at the
we oh
well.
yeah we pulled our water from out of the well and everything. In fact, one of the times Mama and Daddy had gone to town, and I had wanted to go. This is a story that my brothers told me. I had wanted to go to town with them because Mama took me with them most of the time since I was the only girl at home at the time. Um, and so they were looking all around for me and they couldn't find me. And I was told they thought maybe I had fallen into the well.
Oh.
And, but as it turns out, I understand I was in the truck, asleep because I just had cried myself to sleep in the truck because I didn't get to go with Mama
Oh,
to
yeah, to
town.
town. Okay, my goodness. Mother, that seems like light years away from where we are now. Certainly the way I was raised, I
Yes.
would never, I wouldn't know that.
Hmm.
And the home that I visited when I was growing up in Redland
Hmm.
is not the home that you were born in.
No, no, no,
No.
no. It was it was on a dirt road, and we were just at the bend of the road where it curved around, and there was a bridge that you crossed over to get to our home, and we were right in the bend of the road. That's where our property was, and my brothers often played in the branch, as we called it, and lots of times we lay on the bridge and watch the tadpoles and the like. That was the fun for
Right, the
us at the time.
entertainment.
Yes, that
Yes.
was entertainment.
So let's take a moment and talk about your father and your mother. You just mentioned that your father was essentially orphaned when he was young. And
Yes.
I don't know, I actually don't know how old he was when his parents died, but I'm
I
imagining
don't
maybe
either.
15 or so. I
I don't
thought they
know
were.
exactly how old, and maybe even younger, because I think he and Mama, I think he may have been 15 or 16 when they married.
Okay.
They married very early. But Daddy, being one of the older brothers, he wasn't the oldest, but he was one of the older brothers. I had, there was Uncle Bonnie, and I think he was the oldest. Then there was Uncle Troy, and then my dad, Lofton.
Okay.
Uh, and then, of course, Uncle
Uncle
Leon
Leon
and
and
Uncle
Uncle
Vern.
Vern.
Yes, those are the
Okay.
five brothers.
Five boys, five
And
brothers.
one sister, Aunt Ruth.
Aunt Ruth.
Aunt Ruth.
Oh, yes, Ruth.
He had one sister.
We love that name, Ruth,
Yeah.
in our family. Okay, so Daddy Kennedy. I always called him Daddy Kennedy.
Mhm.
Maybe his friends called him Lofton or
Yeah,
LK.
Lofton.
I
LK,
heard
yes.
he and his brothers are left when they're young.
Oh,
You
yes.
know, kind of alone to raise themselves and
Mhm.
fend for themselves in the Jim Crow South. Do you remember his birthday? Like when
Oh,
he was
yes.
born?
Daddy was born May 14th, 1911.
Okay.
Yeah, May 14th, 1911.
Okay. And so very young, they realize that they have to fend for themselves. They have
Oh,
to work
yes.
hard. They have to
Mhm.
figure out life in the Jim Crow South,
Oh,
in
yes.
Texas, in rural East Texas. What did they have? You know, like in terms of land or money or
Um,
agency or anything, did they have aunts and uncles around to kind of help out? Like what was their how did they live?
I don't know of any immediate aunts and uncles that he may have had in the community at the time, and it's just because I don't know. But I know that from Daddy's experience growing up, his dad instilled in them the ability to work with your hands and work. So, them being orphaned early on, they were able to just pick right up and fend for themselves. And I'm sure the community around them probably helped them out somewhat. But, they were a family of 5 boys and a sister, Ruth. And, they were able to work the fields, and
Okay.
there's considerable land that is there that belonged to the Kennedy family.
Okay. So this is in Redland.
In Redland.
So Daddy Kennedy was always in Redland.
Always in Redland.
Essentially born and raised.
Oh, yes.
And eventually died.
Oh, yes.
In Redland.
In Redland. Oh,
okay.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. I don't know that I ever put that together. Some of his brothers went further away, like they left Texas,
Yes.
right? So Uncle Leon moved to LA eventually. Right. Uncle Troy went to Arizona.
Well, no. Uncle Bonnie ended up moving to Arizona because Uncle Bonnie had very severe asthma.
Okay.
And the doctors at the time told him that the humidity in Texas was just too dense for him to be able to thrive with the asthma that he had, the
right.
type of asthma that he
right.
had. So Uncle Bonnie was living at the time in Dallas,
okay.
Texas. And so he moved to Arizona for health reasons.
Okay.
Because the air, was thinner and whatever.
So Daddy Kennedy, Lofton Kennedy,
Mm-hmm.
is a man with incredible work ethic.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And he certainly instills that in his children. And you all work growing up. Yes. I have enjoyed the privilege essentially of a life of leisure. In the summertime, I went to the local daycare. We had camp. We did, we went on field trips. And when I was big enough to not go to daycare, I was at the house eating all day long, melting my brain, watching the same silly reruns. But really, you and Daddy gave Rosalind and I a very, very privileged and sheltered upbringing. I never worked anybody's field. I don't know how to grow a tomato or a lettuce. I don't know any of that.
Yeah.
I was raised so different in a world that is completely different
yes.
from how you were raised.
Yes.
And so it's for me it's shocking to hear some of these stories about how tough it was for the family at the time. Okay.
And Daddy, because of who he was, and a man of God and a believer in God and God's ability to help and direct his life, he did not allow his children to work for anyone.
Oh, yeah. And you've told me this.
Yeah.
And specifically,
Uncle Troy had one son,
mm-hmm.
and that was Marvin. He and Nat were the same age. Uncle Troy raised vegetables for the purpose of truck farming, as they called it. So he would, get his produce and take it into Tyler, and he would sell it from the back of his truck.
Essentially, almost like a farmer's market.
Exactly.
Or we see that
from
in Houston today. A lot of times, local farmers will bring their melon or whatever and just sit out and sell, to the community. They clean up too. Those guys do well.
Uncle Troy had the truck farm, but Daddy, because of the number of children that were in our family, our farm was for our survival, for our living. And I was saying that Daddy did not allow us to work for anyone, not even Uncle Troy, because Uncle Troy had berries. He grew lots of berries, and he would sometimes want us to come and pick his berries, but I don't recall ever picking berries for Uncle Troy to make money, because Daddy just did not allow us to work for other people. Rose farming was a very common thing for people to do in our community. So a lot of the people um, they worked the Rose Farms in Tyler, but Daddy never allowed us to do that. And, he would give us a little money, on the weekends, like $1 or so at the time. And if we went to Tyler, we could buy whatever. But we never worked for anyone
That is
growing up.
that is interesting. Okay. And so that's how he was raised. Talk to me about what you know about Mary Frances and where she's coming from.
Okay. Well, I don't know a lot about Mama in that I was 11 when Mama died.
Right.
And so all I can remember about Mama is that, number one, she was a masterful cook
Okay.
and a housekeeper. And she loved to sing. And she was the lead singer or the soprano, the lead singer in the choir at church. But Mama worked the fields. She went to the fields like we did as
Okay.
well. And, that's kind of, I just have very few memories of Mama. I see her in the kitchen,
Right.
washing dishes and cleaning and cooking and the like. And I see her sometimes, I'm sad to say, with tears rolling down her face. And I didn't know,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it was, just thinking about the conditions and thinking about her children and the awesome responsibility to raise us all. But she was a very God fearing woman.
Yes.
And believed in the power of prayer.
Okay.
Believed in prayer.
Okay. And just to put a punctuation mark on it, Mary Frances departs this world when you're about 11 years old.
Yes.
As a consequence of childbirth.
Yes.
Essentially, that the last birth. I I think, now that I'm a physician, I think maybe Uncle Lofton explained to me she had retained a placenta.
Yes.
But essentially she hemorrhaged.
She hemorrhaged to
and
death.
she died.
I remember when she came home from the hospital with the baby, with Doris, and she just, I really don't ever remember seeing Mama up walking after she gave birth. And I just remember her laying in the bed, and she was always asking me to bring her more cover. I'm putting quilts on her because, again, I'm the only girl at home at the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm bringing quilts to her to cover up, and she was just be shivering you know, now that I'm a nurse, I know that she was hemorrhaging
Yeah.
internally.
Yeah.
And as my sister Jean has described it, at the time that they decided to take Mama back to the hospital in Tyler where she had delivered the baby, and the baby was delivered by Dr. Telefaro, I think was his name. But anyway, uh, when she went back to the hospital, they told Daddy that there was nothing else that they could do for her. And so my sister Jean, being the oldest, and of course she's educated and all at the time, she did not take that
No.
as the end for Mom at the time. So she and Daddy made the decision to take Mama to Dallas in an ambulance. They took Mama from Tyler to Dallas in an ambulance to Parkland Hospital. And this is in September. Doris was born August the 22nd. And so this is, leading up to Labor Day in September and all. When they got Mama to Parkland Hospital in Dallas, she may have been there maybe a day or two. And, they just told Daddy there was nothing else that they could do because she had hemorrhaged internally and there was just nothing that they could do at the time. And so she passed away in Dallas, September the 5th. She passed away on September the 5th, and her service was September the 7th.
Okay. Okay. Today, even today, maternal mortality is higher for Black women
Oh, yes.
in the healthcare system. Um, Black women physicians are less than 3% of all doctors in the
Wow.
United States. And like an even smaller percentage are represented in the obstetrics and gynecology field. And so I'm making the point that representation matters, and that because there continues to be such low representation of us
Yes.
in that field, Black women are still suffering
Yes.
similar consequences
Oh, yes.
in childbirth today.
Oh, yes.
In 2024. And I know that Mary Francis's tragic and fatal experience with the healthcare system, the one time she had a baby in a hospital.
In the hospital.
The one time she had a baby in a hospital. Is what inspired Uncle Lofton to go on and go to medical school and
Yes.
become an OBGYN.
And if I may interrupt you, he initially, as I remember him saying, he had chosen another specialty. I think he was going to be perhaps a neurosurgeon. That was his idea. But after Mama's death, I think that he had the resolve and the determination and I've heard him say that there would be no more maternal deaths.
Yeah.
If he could do anything
Yeah.
about it. So he chose OBGYN for his specialty.
Okay. So, obviously losing your mom at a young age is hard.
Oh, yes.
And you are young. You have described to me that at times, but because you were so young, in some way you were able to protect yourself from it, and you were able to imagine that she was on a trip or, something like that. But that's a big deal. That is a huge blow to any family at any age. I'm mid 40s and I need you to be here another 100 years. So let's just agree that you will never leave. Okay, but back to like your upbringing. So as far back as you can remember, you were working in the fields.
Oh,
you
yes.
grew up working the fields.
Oh, yes. Up until I graduated from high school.
Okay.
I worked in the fields. Now, I have to acknowledge my older sister Jean. She saw the fact that I loved working with hair, because every time she would come home from Dallas, when she'd come home to visit, like at Christmas or Thanksgiving and Easter, the first thing I'd do was go get a comb and I'd start combing her hair and styling it. So she recognized that I liked working with hair. So when I was a junior in high school, she paid for me to go to cosmetology school. I attended Tyler Barber and Beauty College in Tyler. So I went on the weekends while I was in school and in the summer between my junior year and my senior year.
Wow.
So by the time I graduated from high school in my senior year, I went to the state board of cosmetology and passed and got my license, my first license.
Yeah.
Well, my second license, because I had my driver's license.
Okay.
Too.
Okay.
But I credit Jean with gifting me and shaping my life in that sense.
Right.
That I became a cosmetologist.
Right, which is different from field work.
Yes.
She wanted to give you something
Right.
other than that.
Right.
And also having that cosmetology background served you incredibly well. When you got to Prairie View,
yes.
you did a lot of the faculty's hair.
Some of my instructors, as well as my roommates, I had my hot plate and my pressing comb that I had gotten, of course, from the cosmetology school, because we got a kit when we graduated. It had your pressing combs and things like that. So I was able to do hair in the dorm to make a little extra money, because money was so tight when I went to college that Daddy was not able to send us anything extra. And our room and board at the time at Prairie View was $41.72.
Wow.
Daddy would send me a money order, a postal money order for 41.72.
I'm not laughing.
Not $42.
I'm not laughing. So now to the penny.
41.72. Because it was Dad's contention that I had a room and I had board, a meal ticket. So that's all I needed.
Yeah.
But of course, Jean, having gone to college, she knew that there would be things that I, little things I'd want to buy, a little sandwich or candy or something.
Right.
So by making a little money on the side, pressing hair and curling hair in the dorms and doing some of my instructors' hair. In fact, Senorita Hood, who was my Spanish instructor, I was her cosmetologist.
Wow.
I did her hair. And then one of my nursing instructors, I did her hair.
Okay.
I did her hair and her mother's hair.
And you're still doing your very beautiful hair. Look at this gorgeous, these gorgeous cascading curls. Okay.
Thank the Lord for Jean.
She wakes up like this. Okay. And so I started, so we were talking about work and Daddy Kennedy, understanding that he came from kind of a tougher background without parents, and he had very serious work ethic. And Mary Frances, you don't remember a lot about her because she left you young. But you remember that she worked. She worked in the field. She worked. She was a homemaker also. She sang in the choir in church. And I understand that when she was on her deathbed, she made Daddy Kennedy make her a promise. What did she say?
Aunt Jean says that just as they knew that Mama was leaving, she told him, she said, "Lofton, I want you to educate all of my children."
And he did.
And he did. And I know that he was driven to do that because he loved Mama, and Mama had gifted him with 11 children. And so he wanted to keep that promise.
Okay.
So he did.
Well, that's incredible. Now, she had siblings and parents. Tell me about her family, what you recall.
Never knew a grandmother, not Mary Frances's mother, but Grandpa, as we called him, Zach Shavers. He drove an old Ford. I don't know what kind of old Ford it was, but he would come and visit Mama probably 3 or 4 times a week.
Oh, wow.
He'd drive to our house from where he lived and, just sit with Mama and visit with her.
That's really sweet.
So, he was always kind of around, and Grandpa married another lady. Her name was Mariah Shavers. Mariah, I forget what her maiden name was, but of course she became Mariah Shavers. She, I don't know a lot about her as my grandmother because she was not grandmotherly as I perhaps envisioned a grandmother to be.
Right.
And of course, I was older too, so I don't remember a lot about her.
You are a wonderful, wonderful grandmother. Actually, I was blessed with incredible grandmothers. Both of my grandmothers were just, I adore them. And so, okay, so that's Grandpa Shavers. Did Mary Frances Shavers have any siblings?
Yes, she did. There was Aunt. Well, she had a sister that died very early. I think I'm going to say that maybe she was in the early 20s or something because I think she had gone to stay in San Angelo with Aunt Nora, Mama's sister. But she died because I think she may have been Jehovah's Witness or something, and she had some disease or something where she needed blood but refused it because of religious reasons. So she died. So there was Aunt Nora and Aunt Daisy. Aunt Daisy was the youngest of all of the girls, and she married a guy, and they went to California.
Oh, wow.
She lived in California, and Uncle Eli stayed in Brownwood, which is out in West Texas,
Okay.
very close to San Angelo.
Okay.
So he and Aunt Nora were out in the San Angelo and West Texas area, rather.
Okay. So Uncle Eli and Aunt Nora, I always had awareness of. Aunt Nora and I share a birthday.
Yes.
Love Aunt Nora. She came around a lot when I was young.
Mhm.
You know, I she's a wonderful and had a very bright personality,
Yes. Oh,
a great
yes.
sense of humor. I remember asking her what Mary Frances was like, and she was like, "Look at your mom." She was just like, "Your mom. Here she is. This is her." But Uncle Eli, I never had the pleasure of meeting.
Mhm.
I do want to say though, Aunt Nora and Uncle Eli lived to be over 100 years
Over
old.
100. I think Uncle Eli was 101, and I think Aunt Nora was 100.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Why did they live
passed.
so long?
Fresh, clean air. They lived off the earth. The vegetables and the foods that they ate, were just pure and didn't have a lot of pesticides and the like. They just good, clean living. And Aunt Nora married a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
He was a preacher, and he treated her like a queen, and I mean royally. Wow. Like a queen. And he treasured her and loved her, and he built her a house in San Angelo, the home that we visited there. And I'm told that I don't think he ever spent a night in that house because he died. Mm. And I think he was from St. Louis or somewhere like that, St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
And
he was was he a CME preacher?
CME preacher, yes.
So the CME church keeps coming up in my family. I guess I was just destined for the CME church eventually.
Yes,
but
CME.
Okay.
Reverend Wade.
Okay. So Mary Frances, it sounds like she comes from a very strong family structure.
Oh, yes.
She had two parents, she had siblings, her dad loved her and checked on her frequently,
oh, yes.
After she's married. And is she also from Redland, like from
oh,
the
yeah,
area?
She's from Redland. Now, she was a Young. That was her maiden name, Young. And the Youngs, from what I know of, come from Prairie Creek, which is an adjoining community to Redland.
Okay.
So there are many of our cousins and the like who live in Prairie Creek that are Youngs.
Okay.
And just a side note, Aunt Jewel married a Reverend Lot. She married a guy named, I forget his first name, but they went into the mortuary business, and they own Lot's Funeral Home in Dallas on Forest Avenue, one of the main thoroughfares in Dallas. And their mortuary was a very prestigious mortuary for blacks. And
this would have been in like the 40s, 50s.
Yeah, because Mama died in 1958.
Okay.
So, they had a thriving business. And so since Mama was in Dallas when she died, then Aunt Jewel, her cousin, they were first cousins, Aunt Jewel and her husband, they did her, they picked up her body and all, and they did it, and they drove. In fact, we rode in the funeral car from Dallas to Redland. I remember that day very distinctly.
Wow.
September the 7th.
I would imagine. Yeah.
September the 7th.
Okay, so Mary Frances comes from a good family home.
Oh, yes.
I don't know that she was what you would call materially wealthy or or anything like that. She too comes from humble beginnings.
Yes.
Like Daddy Kennedy.
Right.
And some kind of way they meet in Redland. They're both there, and they decide to get married, and they have a family. They have 11 children together. Yes. All of the children grow up with very serious work ethic, and all of the children uh, go to college and graduate from
yes.
college.
Yes.
Okay, that's incredible. So there is something else that I don't quite understand. I don't know if you have if you know the answer to the question of how much land did the family actually have?
I really could not. I have no comprehension of acreage and the like. But I just remember that I went home, I guess about 5 or 6 years ago, and one of my classmates was talking to me because he said he was interested in was looking at some of the land in Redland for the purpose of purchasing in it. He said, all the land belongs to the Kennedys.
Oh, wow.
I said, no. But, in his mind, he says, you all own a lot of land.
Okay.
Well, there is considerable land
Okay.
that is in the Kennedy family.
Well, that to me is another mystery because my father and his family have spoken about their land,
Yes.
and even land trouble. As we approach the turn of the, I guess, the millennia. From the 1900s to the 2000s.
Yes.
But on your side of the family, I haven't heard as much talk of land trouble, but I do understand that the land is what essentially raised the family and kept the family. It was your treasure.
Oh, yes.
It was your treasure. You all weren't
Indeed.
materially wealthy, but you
No.
didn't depend. I mean, you did. I would imagine if you had land and all those hands, all those kids, of course you need money. Like I don't mean to suggest that nobody needs money, but if you can feed yourself and you have a
Yes.
roof and you have a family infrastructure there to
Yes.
love and support you,
Yes.
you actually don't necessarily require a whole lot of financial wealth to live. You need money to go to college. You need
Yes.
money to travel.
Yes.
Clothes on your back and all of that. But having land, in my mind, equals wealth.
Yes.
And you all had a substantial amount of land that you
Yes.
were raised on.
But I will say that Daddy, because of his vision of work and his respect for work, he had his own landscaping business.
Okay.
And Daddy did some of the most beautiful. He landscaped the property of some of the very wealthy people in Tyler. So he had his own business pretty much most of my life.
Right.
Because I always remember him having a landscaping business. So that was a source of income for him as well.
He had a high agriculture IQ. Like
Oh,
clearly,
yes.
he grew lots of vegetables, but he also was responsible for these very prominent landscapes in Tyler. I remember growing up and hearing that Tyler was the rose capital of the world.
Oh, yes.
Now I don't know if the world knows that.
It is.
But,
Oh,
okay,
it is.
the
It
world
is,
knows that.
It
Okay.
is definitely the
Okay.
rose capital of the world.
Okay. Well, okay. So, and Daddy Kennedy is responsible for some of the beautiful, landscaping that is happening in Tyler, in the 40s and 50s for sure. And I didn't ask you about your education. You grew up in segregated schools in the South.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Talk to me. Just say.
Well, what I will say is in elementary school, I had a teacher. Her name was Cora Pierce. Mrs. Pierce taught for 50 years. She taught my dad
Wow.
first grade and all of his children.
Wow.
She taught all of Daddy's children first grade. She was our first grade teacher, and I think that was just remarkable. Now we never Miss Pierce was a very fair-skinned lady. We thought she was white, but her brother, who had some kind of disability, lived on the campus of the Redland School, and he was very brown like us. So I just assumed she was just a fair-skinned light lady with very pretty
wavy hair.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, so So, interestingly, you come out of these segregated colored schools in the
Mm-hmm.
Jim Crow South
Yes.
and rise to be one of the most powerful people in Harris County Hospital District. Ben Tom is legendary. You know,
It
anybody in
is.
Houston knows if you get shot or stabbed, you want to go
Take
to
me
the
to Ben
tub,
Tom.
go
Take
to
me
the
to Ben
tub.
Tom.
They will put you back together. And you help to develop, you know, a lot of the programs and lead a lot
Yes.
of the nurses in
Mm-hmm.
that very large healthcare infrastructure. But you know, in the beginning, you are poor and
Oh,
you are
yes.
black in a segregated South. You are educated by a community of people who care deeply,
Oh,
you know, for
indeed.
you and for your education.
Indeed.
Talk to me about your education conditions. You know, how is where you come from different from the schools that my children attend
Okay.
today?
Well, of course, when I went to Redland Elementary School, and elementary was first through the eighth grade at the time,
Okay.
um, I think there were 5 teachers on board, and Mrs. Cartwright, O.C. Cartwright, was the principal of our school, and I think she also taught the eighth grade, perhaps. And these teachers came from Tyler, and they would come out to our community, to the school, to teach every day. And then when I was in the eighth grade, they had told us they had made provisions for us to be able to go to Emmett Scott in Tyler, to the big school, Emmett Scott, in the city of Tyler. And
Is that an integrated school or a public
at the
or
time, it
a
was not. It was
colored school?
segregated.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
segregated, but it was the school to go,
Okay.
the high
Okay.
school to go to.
Okay.
Well, by the time I graduated, they said Emmett Scott was overcrowded
Oh,
because many of the communities, like, Redland
right.
and the people from adjoining community,
Right.
their children went to Emmett Scott. So we ended up having to go to Lindale High School, Bragg Morris High School in Lindale, Texas. And it was about 20 miles
Oh,
from where
oh,
we lived.
oh,
We rode the bus
goodness.
20 miles every day.
That is a long way to
Oh, yeah,
school.
20
I
miles on the
didn't know
school
that.
bus. On the school bus.
Who drove
And
the bus?
my cousin Tom, cousin Tom Kennedy, he drove the bus. And he drove around the community and picked everybody up. And then I don't know what cousin Tom would do while we were in school. I don't know if he worked at the campus, maybe as a janitor or something or whatever. But we got on the bus and came back another 20 miles. I think they said 19.8 miles from
Oh
Redland
my
to Lindale.
gosh.
And we did
Wow.
that every day.
Wow.
Every day. That's right.
And so, what kinds of extracurricular activities are there for children like you in the
Okay.
community?
Um, well, at Redland, we always had like school closing programs and the like, and Mrs. Cartwright played the piano. So we always had kind of musical productions and things like that. And when I went to high school at Bragg Morris, I think the year that I went, they said that the band room or the school caught on fire, and all of the band instruments were burned.
Oh no.
And so there was never a band,
No.
there was never a football team at Bragg Morris High School. We had basketball and baseball.
Okay.
And I played basketball, and uh, part of my time on the team, I served as captain of the girls basketball team. So,
Wow. You're captain of the basketball
and that
team.
was lots of fun.
Okay.
Lots and lots of fun. And we traveled with cousin Tom, would drive the bus for us to the different schools that we competed with,
Okay.
in basketball.
Okay. When did you know you could sing?
Probably uh, 3, 4, 5, something like that, because Daddy, raising us in the church, you always were in the midst of music and the like. But Daddy put Zach and I together, and we would sing songs together, as a little duet at church. And in fact, one of our major debuts, he took us to Dallas to Salem Baptist Church. Uncle Bunny was the pastor of that church. And that was our first time really singing in front of kind of a big audience other than at County Line.
So I haven't said this yet, but so Daddy Kennedy he's a preacher, he's a pastor, he's a singer, he's been a concert promoter.
Yeah.
When you were growing up in your home, you all hosted famous Black luminaries, I'm imagining
that's what I'm told.
Right.
And because I was, very young at the time when we moved to the house where we lived, my brother Thomas is the one that kind of told me that, with Daddy being somewhat of a promoter of some of these big acts that would come to the East Texas region, like the Soul Stirrers and Sam Cooke and Lou Rawls and whatever, and Daddy being somewhat of a promoter and making provisions for them to spend the night. Now, Thomas says that some of those people spent the night in our home.
Wow.
Now, I don't recall that.
Oh my
but
God.
That's what,
I just think that's a big deal. If Sam Cooke and Lou Rawls actually spent the night at my grandparents' home.
Don't know if it's fact, but that's what I.
Well, I'm going to talk to Uncle Thomas.
Yes,
I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a big deal, but I just wanted to make the point that our family, for as long as I have had any being, we have been very connected to the church.
Oh, yes.
And certainly connected to church music.
Oh, yes.
So Daddy Kennedy sang in kind of a quartet with his brothers at one point.
They were the Kennedy Four.
The Kennedy Four.
And they made a record.
Yeah.
They made a record.
Okay. And then Uncle Zach, he sang when he was at Prairie View. They were called the Black Student Youth.
He sang with the Alvin Dread Singers. But on the campus, I think they started as the Baptist Student Movement.
Baptist Student Movement.
And Alvin Dread was a member of that, and he formed his own choir.
Okay.
So Zach was a part of that, and they made a couple of albums.
Right, Alvin. So Uncle Zach grows up singing gospel music and is in the gospel choir at Prairie View.
Yes.
You certainly are singing. You competed in competitions in high school. You were serious.
Yes, I sang in the Lindale always had an amazing choir, and Roger Shelton was our music teacher, and we had an octet of which Uncle Lee, my brother, was a member of, and there's a family of Tennysons. This family, they have beautiful voices, so they are well known in the Lindale community. So it was largely those Tennysons and me and Lee and a few others that were in the octet, and we did compete in the Interscholastic League, and occasionally I competed in the solo division of the Interscholastic League.
Wow, that's incredible.
So it was very rewarding experience.
Incredible. And so all of you left Redland. To my knowledge, no one really went back to live in Redland.
No one.
None of your siblings. With between Daddy Kennedy and Mary Frances. But there are other families like yours that have a similar story.
Oh, yes.
There are May homes in the Redland community. They go to like A&M.
Lindale.
In the Lindale
they're
community.
From the Lindale community.
And they go on to, I guess, Prairie View and Texas A&M. Okay.
Bill, they didn't go to Prairie View. Bill went to Texas A&M.
He went to A&M.
He went to A&M.
Okay.
And he was the first African American cadet in the cadet corps there.
Wow.
And in fact, they're doing a documentary somewhat about his life.
That's really cool.
Yes.
Okay.
But he was my classmate and my best friend all through high school.
Okay. And the Kayas are
Colliers.
Colliers are our cousins.
Right.
And they too do very well and come
Oh,
out of
yes.
the Redland community.
Oh, yes, they are. Their parents sent them all to college.
I just, it's a beautiful thing that the community nurtured and supported the children and figured out a way to get the children off the farm.
Yes.
Not that there's anything shameful or bad about being on the farm. I romanticize, the idea of having that land and living on the land. I think it's a really beautiful thing. But like being able to have options beyond the farm, and come to the city and build a huge life, and huge career for yourself, I think is a wonderful thing.
And see, at our church, there was a Professor Nelson, as we called him, and a Mr. Lee. Professor Nelson was at the high school, like when my brothers were at the Redland High School. And there was our pianist, May Ruth Lee. She was a teacher, and also we were around professionals who encouraged us to, see what was out there, to pursue beyond where we were in Redland. So we were encouraged. And of course, when I went to Lindale, Mrs. Daniels, my very favorite teacher, always encouraged us. And, she taught me English and literature. Those were the primary subjects. And at one of our reunions, she told us that she always gave us more than what was required because she knew that we were going to college. She knew that most of us were college bound.
Yeah.
So she wanted to make sure that we were prepared. And I made A's all through college in English and literature.
That's awesome, Mommy.
I always made A's.
You're still a beautiful writer. I still need you to edit my stuff. All of my things.
Mrs. Daniels.
I run through my
Mrs.
Mother.
Daniels.
Well, Mommy, thank you so much for talking to me.
We
will do this again.
Indeed.
Put your brothers on notice. I'm coming for them.
Okay.
Because I want to hear their memories.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.